It's great to have you within the sound of my voice. And right now I'm going to talk about a little book that seems to have a lot of secrets, I think. Vibration from Palam Palam is a novel by Doral Wilcott. The cover art on this book is a beautiful abstract with rich, deep colors that just gives you a feeling of optimism. But before that, let's hear about 4 books I read from the Jamaica Library Service this year. The beauty of an allegorical story is that it is open to interpretation. You fill in the blanks or undo the mysticism in search of the underlying point of the story, and on the way, you make other discoveries. Vibration from Palam Palam, a novel by Doral Wilcott, published by Arawak Publications in 2012, leaves me with the impression that although this book is not an allegory, the author is deliberately misleading the reader by skipping over and around situations that should be important to the story, and yet he expends description and a commentary on seemingly lesser matters. The reader is left wondering about the reason for the deliberate gaps and the mysteries behind what and why other things are paid careful attention. The modest 142 pages is an action packed story of the life arc of the protagonist, Dalphus Congonza. Now, I must tell you that just a slight habit of mine, because the name Dalphus ends with an S. When I want to say something belongs to Dalphus or is ascribed to Dalphus, I will still say the Dalphus and not say Dalphuses. It's just the way I was taught, when I was growing up, and it's something I've kept, but it's not very popular. So if I want to say this Dalphus's mother, I will instead say Dalphus' mother. So the book starts with his parents' stories and ends with a look at the adult startup of his children. This completeness of a life story suggests that it is a memoir, but a memoir that does not trust the reader. So while it is not the story of an airbrushed hero, the material feels redacted and so a little bit incomplete. The foreword by Patrick Bryan is helpful in explaining the protagonist. Bryan says of Dalphus, and I start the quote, "First, his ambition is to throw off the scars and the negative features of that childhood and to succeed in spite of them. Second, and in contradiction, some of the values that he disdains and which contributed to the dysfunctionality of his family became a part of his own value system." The novel is not preoccupied with race and color. However, they both have an enormous influence in shaping the lives of people and contributing to the dysfunction within the Dalphus family. End of quotation. So what's the story about? Dalphus grew up in Palampan, exposed to minimal education. Now, Palampan was supposed to be a frightfully haunted woodland within the rural community of Service, somewhere in northern Jamaica's hinterland. Dalphus is the only child in a family where there is no love among its 3 members: the mother, the father, and Dalphus, the child. Even though Dalphus caused hurt to his mother early on, it was his childish reaction to her obvious scorn of him. Wilcott, the writer, says of the mother, and I quote, who had seen everything that she disliked about her husband in that little boy, close quotation. Chilling words, which are not unfamiliar in our society. The natural environment of rural Jamaica is integrated into the book from beginning to end. Dalphus' father cleared dense woodland and built the family home. As an adult, Dalphus shaped a rocky hilltop overlooking the community of Service for his own large and splendid house. Woodland was also where his closest friend died. Dalphus made his living from farming the rocky land, but he did it successfully and managed to pass down the interest in farming to one of his sons. Relationships between the character and the women in his life are complicated. His mother, his lover, his wife, his mother-in-law, and elder daughter are the females who are important in his life. Dalphus knows that he's not excelling in these relationships, but he displays incompetence in how to improve them, and relies on his friend Gustavius to play the role of conciliator and waymaker many times. When he was just about out of his teens, Dalphus lived for a few years in Cuba and was able to work hard, take use of opportunities that came his way, and save money. He is awkward with women, but finds ways to incorporate them in his life. For example, as a young man, he went to a bar and was enjoying the music by himself and was surprised when Primella, the beautiful Primella, showed interest. The book says he declined, almost becoming flustered. Then he looked at her again. The chemistry, or whatever they used to call it, mixed furiously. And that's how Dalphus experiences romance. Later on, Dalphus quite easily leaves Primella to enter into an intimate and financially lucrative relationship with Emma. The writer tells us Dalphus had hitched a fee simple in Emma's financial empire. Later, back in Service, as a married man, Dalphus' mother-in-law is banned from his home for her destructive slander, and his older daughter, the apple of his eye, disappoints when she marries against his wishes. Dalphus' relationships with men seem steady and true and valuable, aside from Bandy Leg, who tried to take advantage of him while he was a naive teenager. His friend Gustavius, whom he met while still a boy, became a lifelong confidant and wise counselor for both Dalphus, his wife, the beautiful, educated, and unworldly Odegled, who, like Dalphus' mother, defied her family to marry him, or to get married. As a businessman, Dalphus understands and is not held down by society's prejudices that were against him for reasons of his color and lack of education. He worked around the established religious institution, the police force, financial institutions, and even his sometimes covetous neighbors at Rico's bar. He rises above these challenging situations and masters them. He also somehow becomes reconciled with his father, but did not with his mother. And here we arrive at the rock bottom of all of the story of Dalphus, the lack of a loving relationship with his mother Tantal, which left him stone dead to anticipating and nurturing sensitivity in family and intimate relationships. By the end of the book, however, he is grateful to have actually shared loving moments with his wife and to have experienced love and affection with his children. His children, however, were not a united family. The book tells us that each one deciding to be set against the ways of the others. Dalphus did nothing to heal the rifts between the siblings and was a participant by making it obvious that Daphne was his chosen one. The writer's choice of what he paid great attention to writing about was diverse. He set out the matters around the death of Gustavus in excruciating detail, yet the three marriages in the book were glossed over or became commentaries on society in general. Dalphus witnessed physical violence in his home as his father beat his mother, and we later learn that his father also regularly beat his longtime lover. These beatings were not described in the book, yet the writer did describe how his father, Siego Gauza, met a brutal retribution. The writer paid reverence to the very existence of Marcus Garvey, who influenced Dalphus' father's philosophy and actions, but he does not go beyond this reverence to actually show us the teachings in action, perhaps almost ignoring them, paying lip service to them. Wilcott also lets us know that Dalphus is distressed that descendants of Africans who were enslaved in the Americas had not built on the successes and sacrifices of the Haitian Revolution and other freedom fighters. It is a theory of mine that stories of relationships with the protagonist and his or her mother defines many contemporary books by Jamaicans. This book fits into that category. In these stories, the actions of the mother greatly influences the success or failure of the protagonist. The writers enjoy or want to tell these stories. They are central to reasons why they write books. Applying this scrutiny to Tantale, the mother of Dalphus, we note that there was only one action that was within her true control: her choice of husband, Siego Congoza. Everything else about Tantale is ascribed to the society in which she lived. Tantale existed as a light-skinned Jamaican who was raised by a snobbish light-skinned Jamaican woman, but yet Tantale chose to marry a dark-skinned follower of the black liberation teachings of Marcus Garvey and stay with him through a loveless marriage. Siego Congoza beat his wife if he felt threatened by her words, and also, and separately, neglected her for the more stimulating company of his lover in the town of Service. Dalphus was a victim of his mother's frustration about her husband, and she transferred her prejudices to her son, nurturing attitudes in him that would later influence him to believe that he was better than and different from the other children in Service. He also transferred this habit of aloofness and prejudices and preferences within his own family and among his own children. But his resilience to his mother's aloofness helped him when facing prejudices against him in society, and allowed him to simply accept them as inevitable and proceed with focus towards his personal goals and achieve them. Many more ideas are not fully set out in the story, leaving them open to interpret the full weight that they have on the protagonist or not. The many references to the legacy of the Spanish in the West Indies is one matter that had the attention of the writer. Readers will find it interesting to meander with Dalphus through his life in a Jamaica of once upon a time, but perhaps attitudes and behaviors and cultures are still very much here with us. For more discussion on the theme of mothering in books written by Jamaicans and other books that I have read, visit the YA Readers LinkedIn page, and it will take you to these and other articles. Listen now for a flash fiction series, The Amazing Adventures of Maud, a Jamaican Grandmother. Thanks for listening.